We could have a severe weather outbreak tomorrow, Monday, July 15th. This is the SPC day for tomorrow. And see, there's a large enhanced risk that has been issued extending from Iowa into northern Illinois and even parts of northern Indiana. And threats with this could include some possibly large tornadoes. Here's the day 2 tornado outlook. We will be taking a look at today's severe weather too. We'll get to that in just a second. But here is today's or tomorrow's tornado percentage look. We have a large 5% risk here extending from parts of Iowa extending back into northern Illinois. And this could signal for potentially large tornadoes to form tomorrow, along with some winds tomorrow. This is the wind outlook for tomorrow, along with that tornado outlook. We have a 30% hatched risk, and the black outline means it could be 75 plus or greater with tomorrow's threat. However, the hail outlook for tomorrow does not seem to be too impressive, so the greatest threats for tomorrow will likely include tornadoes and damaging winds and potentially heavy downpours of rain within these storms. Now let's head over to today's outlook. So this is today's. We have two slight risks. We have one down here in the Midwest going down towards the Ohio Valley. Then we have another one up here in the north central part of the United States. Both of these risks do include a hail outlook, but a hail chance, but that hail chance is much higher, more towards the northern part of the United States today. We also have a slight potential for tornadoes. We have two areas of predominant area for tornadoes. We have one back up here in North Dakota here, and we also have one down here where the other slight risk is issued down in the Ohio Midwest area. Again, very slight risk or very low chance for tornadoes, but isolated spin up cannot be ruled out with these storms. And if we take a look at the damaging wind threat for today, the greatest threat for any damaging winds or potentially large hail will be back up in the northern part of the United States. However, there is still a general risk down in the Ohio Valley region. Let's get into today's radar. We're going to take a look at the north central tier of the United States and the Ohio Valley region. And then we're going to do a full forecast breakdown into tomorrow's severe weather event across the Midwest. So let's start off with the radar in the Ohio Valley region, because this is something that has been going on now for a couple of hours here, with these storms that have been going over the area here. And you can tell by the temperature plot from 5 o'clock today, you can see there's this big area of just cool 70s where there's a bunch of 90s. That's that storm. That's those storms that are in the area. And if we take a look, and here's the radar. This is a weakening system that it is beginning to weaken, but we have a large storm system that has been going through the Ohio, pretty much central to western Ohio region for the past couple of hours, and this has been producing some damaging winds. As you see, there's a long bow echo, and usually bow echoes indicate very strong winds coming out the front of the storm, pushing the winds out the front from the back. This is weakening, so this should not be lasting much longer. However, this will persist for a couple more hours as it continues to move off towards the southeast direction into West Virginia and possibly even parts of Virginia. Let's head up to the northern tier of the United States now, up here, and we're going to run the simulated radar as these storms will be popping up here a little bit later on. This is around 7 p.m. We have some large storms, some big storms here popping up into the northern part, up into like the northwestern part of North Dakota. And you see, we'll have some long convection begin to spread out here. We'll have convection pretty much kind of hug the border of the United States and Canada. However, this convection will likely begin to spread southerly as the storms move off. You see, they will begin to track they'll form and begin to to start tracking a little bit south towards Minnesota and those general areas by 9 p.m. This is what the storms look like by 9. We have these kind of congealed areas of possibly supercells, and this is where there's that tornado threat. Is there's this congealed line that could form some isolated tornadoes with any embedded supercells, or supercell like this that kind of hangs at the bottom of this miniature line that develops. Again, very small risk, nothing to be concerned about. And eventually, these storms will continue to persist and move generally in the easterly direction into the overnight hours. If we take a look at the supercell composite here, you can see the whole area is pretty much primed for any type of tornado activity, realistically extending back down into South Dakota. However, that shouldn't be much of a threat in South Dakota. The only threat will be up here, where these storms form. Greatest threat that I think there could be storms would generally be in this kind of area as the overnight hours happen. As you notice, we'll see the storms here hit this really volatile atmosphere. There's that blue look right there. That's how you know that that's a storm there. And it's in this very rich environment for a spin up or two, which is why they've outlined that area. But these storms will, like I said, they will move off into to another area that's not as primed as back further to the west. But these storms will start off in a very rich environment for tornadoes. So when those storms first initiate, there is that initial risk. But as they move off to the east, it becomes very, very low and doesn't really become much of a threat. So let's go ahead and get into tomorrow's risk. As I said, there's already an enhanced risk for tomorrow, with a chance for an elevated risk of tornadoes, along with some damaging winds. So here's the overview of the Ohio Valley here. Remember, that enhanced risk has been outlined in this area right over here. It's been outlined in this general area. So first off, let me go to another forecasting model that shows a little bit further out, so we can get a better idea of what we're looking at for into tomorrow. I'm sorry. So if we start the radar here, we will around. So this is 5 p.m. today. Sunday, 5 p.m. today, we'll have some convection move out through the overnight hours here. Shouldn't be too much of a risk. There is that slight risk in place, so we will have some possible severe storms move out in the region throughout this area overnight tonight. But that will quickly weaken off. As you see, it'll be in Michigan by around 5 a.m. Shouldn't be anything super severe. Could have some extending rain showers back into western and parts of eastern Ohio and western PA if they make it there, which they probably won't. Starting off at around 1 p.m., there's not much going on in the risk area. Well, that's because there could be two reasons. One, the cap, which basically is a layer, and if the storms break that cap early, it would cause earlier initiation across the area. However, if we go ahead and run this, this says around 7 p.m., we get some possible supercells begin to fire back up in northern Minnesota, back in basically western Iowa and northern, extreme southern to extreme northern Ohio, Iowa and Minnesota. But if we could have some further convection develop in parts of the risk area. However, as we run this ahead, it does congeal into a long kind of bow segment here, which this does pose a risk of the tornado threat. But this would be a typical derecho event, and derecho is basically a long line of storms that creates severe damaging winds. However, this should not be anticipated. The much more common thing should just be a long bowing segment with a possibility of tornadoes up here on the northern side, with these storms kind of out ahead right here. This would be however, this would be a typical setup for derecho. However, still could be with that significant damaging wind threat. But if we run this ahead, you can see it quickly kind of fans out here. But if we start further back here at around 8 p.m., we'll have some strong possible supercells to begin to develop. And that tornado risk doesn't really get going till it hits right around kind of this area, right in here. And that's for any embedded supercells along this line of storms that will move through the area overnight, Monday into Tuesday night. And again, but these should not last too long. As soon as they move into northern Iowa, this model has the southern part of this line here kind of thinning out, and this northern part here becoming much more predominant and much more strong as it moves into the Chicago region. As there's this big cluster that moves into the Chicago region, which could cause some damaging winds and maybe an isolated tornado or two by 12 a.m. Tuesday, July 16th. However, this quickly fans out. However, we do still have some persisting storms up here, way north of where that other line was back in Iowa here. However, nothing should be forming to the south of this kind of cluster up here. If anything does form, it should just be some rumbles of thunder, maybe some just heavy downpours, but nothing severe will happen if anything develops to the south of that cluster of storms. That cluster of storms, though, however, that cluster will enter the northern part of Ohio and move into the Greater Lakes region by tomorrow here. And there is a marginal risk extending pretty much anywhere through here tomorrow. Actually, could be a little bit further south, too. But anywhere along in that marginal risk, something could form. But this cluster of storms will quickly fade out. They won't make by the time they make it anywhere near central Ohio, they will be well below the severe limit and should cause relatively no more issue. However, that marginal risk could have some storms blow up here. Really anywhere could have some convection blow up. Again, tomorrow Wednesday's risk should not be too anticipated for severity. Could cause some damaging winds, some isolated damaging winds, large hail, and perhaps maybe a couple spin ups. But otherwise, that is it. That would be it for Wednesday's threat. So really quick, we're gonna take a look at the updrafts here. See if updrafts we can look for that can be for large hail, and possibly you can also get that for tornadoes. So quickly, you can see these numbers, these dots here indicate strong updrafts. And so here's Monday at around 8 p.m. when the storms initially fire. You can see these very strong updrafts, which could indicate some spin for tornadoes, which wouldn't be, which is why there's that 5% in place for that area. And as we run this ahead, you'll see they do begin to thin out. However, there is still a prolonged tornado threat really anywhere from here to here. It will be extremely low, but there is still an isolated threat for a couple tornadoes. Finally, we're going to take a look at the long term. Actually, we're going to take a look at shear values, because this is also how you can tell for tornadoes is spin. So upon initiation, there will be areas of plenty of shear, and these brown and white values indicate over 100, indicate 60 to 70 knots of wind shear, which is plenty for supercells to start spinning in the atmosphere. And as we run ahead, you can see this line becomes very shear related here. So again, that's anything isolated, any embedded supercells are isolated could definitely spin up could definitely become a tornadic risk threat for tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see everybody in the next forecast.